Comprehensive Selenium automation, a rapid and complete solution to test web apps using Selenium. So before we get into the details, let's just look at typical Selenium development. Most scripting or Selenium scripting is usually manually created. The scripts have to be changed manually when the website changes. A lot of scripts test the same paths through the logic. You'll find lots of duplication. There is no measurable notion of coverage in terms of which logic gates are being covered. You need technicians to build the scripts generally. You need to manually look up the page object names. There's a lot of pressing F12 and looking for XPaths. You need to create code to search for page objects. Even keyword frameworks driving Selenium require a lot of maintenance. And every time a requirement changes, you need to go through every existing script. So what is VIP and how does it help? VIP is a complete and customizable testing framework that has 5 major components. The first is Test Modeler, a SaaS-based BPMN tool to model processes. It will automatically identify the optimum set of test cases using advanced coverage techniques, and it can directly support model-based design or BDD or TDD. At its heart is a powerful TDM engine that lets you make sure you have the right data in place to support your automation. Everything can be defined using Excel, reducing time learning new tools and letting you reuse your existing test assets. The framework has direct support for Selenium and Appium, plus can connect to virtually any API. It lets you use your own homegrown test framework, as well as supporting the major automation tools such as Eggplant, Parasoft and Perfecto. We can virtualize endpoints and build intelligent and matching request-response pairs, spin up sandboxes on demand, as well as supporting all message types. Finally, we can integrate with your DevOps toolchain and help you integrate your software lifecycle so you can build up an accurate map of dependencies and start moving into the world of AI-driven development. VIP, a rapid and complete solution to test web apps using Selenium. The VIP framework runs the automation tests for you. There's no scripting or technical skill required. The test data is calculated just before the automation runs. If the web page changes, just recapture the page objects. And of course, if the logic changes, you update the business process model and recreate the tests in a few seconds. You can choose different types of coverage, in other words, the number of tests, dependent on time and risk. You can measure the coverage and explore failures easily. A page object module is automatically captured. You can record existing tests and capture the objects. You can build a model from existing automation, so run the automation and record and build the model. You can build a model from exploratory or manual testing or crowd testing. You can use business process modeling to create the web page logic. The model is then mapped to the objects and Selenium actions. The model is then mapped to advanced test data functions, and the expected results are defined as part of the model. So there are a lot of components to the VIP framework, but for this demo we are going to be looking at Test Modeler, Test Data Management and the Automation Framework. We're going to define the web page logic, define the expected results, look at different types of coverage, add detailed test data specifications, calculate the pass and fails, and then finally show you the Selenium running. The demo is broken into 7 different components, so feel free to skip ahead to the piece that interests you.
In this video we're going to be testing the authentication screen of a CRM web app called Splendid CRM. To get started with any automation, the identifiers for each element must be captured. Usually this is a manual process. Here we're going to be using our recording technology, which lives as a browser extension. And what we're going to do is scan this page for the element identifiers automatically and add them into our repository. So we'll hit the scan button here, and we're going to select a location to save these identifiers and give it a suitable name, in this case login. We'll click upload, and this is going to upload the identifiers to our repository. Now what we'll do is head over to Modeler to take a look at the page objects that have been recorded. So here we'll see the login object which has been uploaded. If we open that, we'll see the elements that have been recorded into the Test Modeler repository. So we'll see here it's automatically picked up the username field and the password field, as well as some other attributes like the submit button. If we take a look, we'll see that it's picked up many attributes or many identifiers for detecting that element. And it's also given them a confidence value of how likely that identifier is of extracting that element. Now let's start building a model for our authentication system. You'll see here we already have a model for the add document component of Splendid CRM. We're going to chain this together into our authentication model later on. But for now, we're going to go in and create a new model for the login page. So we'll create a new login model. Okay, so we're going to get started by dragging a start node onto the canvas. In this case, we're going to test two scenarios through the login system: an authenticated state, which is going to represent our positive tests, and an unauthenticated state, which is going to represent our negative scenarios through the login system. So we'll add our two endpoints to our flow to represent these states. Firstly, the authenticated, and secondly, the unauthenticated state. Now we'll add everything in between, which is the logic of our authentication screen. So we're going to start off adding in a condition, which is going to represent the route we go down. So here, we'll say, is this a valid user? Now, if this is a valid user, we're going to go through and we're going to enter a valid username. And then secondly, we're going to enter a valid password. And we'll chain these together, as so. Inside Modeler, some of you will notice we're using the BPMN notation, which means we can integrate seamlessly with the business via importing and exporting to this common format, which can be a great starting point to begin modeling. Okay, so now we've added a few nodes, we'll fast forward adding the rest of the logic into the system. Inside Modeler, adding test data is very simple. We have the concept of variables which can be set throughout the model. In this case, we're going to add two variables. Firstly, a username variable, and secondly, a password variable, which we're going to set dependent on the routes we go down in the model. So we'll add those two variables. Now we're going to go into our model and set the values according to the blocks that we pass through in our flow. So we'll go into the test data panel here. I'm going to click add, and I'm going to select the username field, and I'm going to enter a static value for this variable, which is admin. And I'll click save. Now this block is associated with the static value admin. We're now going to add a value to the password field. This time we're not going to add a static value, we're going to add a dynamic expression. Here we have a connection to VIP's TDM engine, which has over 500 functions for generating synthetic data. As you'll see, we can generate various addresses, companies, dates, financial information, phone numbers. In this case, we're going to create a synthetic password. So we'll hit equals here, and we'll add our function. Now whenever we pass through this block, a new password will be generated using this synthetic function. Now we've added test data references to the rest of the model, we're going to go through and overlay some automation into our model. In this case, we're going to be adding calls to Selenium actions, but we also have native integrations with Eggplant, Appium, and Parasoft, along with the ability to integrate with other frameworks, including any homegrown or keyword-driven scripts. So let's add some automation. So we're going to go into the automation panel here. The way we expose automation is through modules which promote good automation practice. Now if we click on the authenticated node here, what we're going to do is we're going to construct a new module. Now we're going to call this module authenticated, and we're going to click on the edit button here, which opens our module builder screen. We're going to add a new row, and the first action we're going to want to perform on this page is to enter a username. Now we're going to type in enter, and you'll see what happens here is it filters through our commands which we have available for Selenium. So instantly we can see the enter text action, and we'll click that, and the rest of the UI is populated with the parameters necessary. So firstly we need to specify a selector for the username block, which we've picked up from our previously scanned object model, and we're going to tag this against the username variable to be injected. We're then going to add a new row, which is enter password. Again, this is going to be an enter text action. This time we're going to hit the password field, and we're going to inject the password variable. Finally, we need to click the login button. So we'll perform a click action, and we're going to tag this against the login button. Now what we can also do is we can verify and validate, so we can add assertions, and here we're going to add an assertion that the URL points to the page we navigate to after a successful login. So that's how we construct a module calling automation actions and enter the appropriate parameters for that action to be executed. Now we've tagged the authenticated node with automation, we're going to go in and tag the unauthenticated node . So now you get the idea of how to build models, add test data, and associate automation to our models. It's now time to start creating some tests. So what we've done here is we've embedded the authentication system that we just created into a much larger flow we've created using the concept of subflows. And we've chained that together with a document creation flow which adds a new document into the CRM system. Now what you'll see here is that if we pass through the unauthenticated state, we terminate the flow. If we authenticate in the login system, we go through and we then execute the add document logic. Now we split the test creation up into 3 different profiles. Now profiles define how our tests are generated. So we have a profile here which generates all paths, and what we're using here is a high coverage level that's going to be applied across the whole model. We've also got a profile for negative tests, and here what we've done is we've tagged some filters where any valid data we're going to ignore. So we're going to focus all of our tests on the invalid data where we want to generate tests with a high level of coverage. And we're also generating a coverage profile for positive tests where, similar to the negative tests, we're generating tests with a high level for valid data and we're ignoring all invalid data in the test. So we'll just go off and generate some valid tests, and it's going to spin up our path generator. Now we'll see 8 paths have been generated. Let's go through and take a look at these tests. So we'll open that up and we'll see these 8 tests here. We can flick through them and we can see that all of these tests are focusing on the positive scenarios where we're authenticating successfully and we're creating a document down below. If we take a look at the negative tests, we'll flip over to here. We've got 3 negative tests, and all of these 3 focus on the negative scenarios of an invalid login. And we've also generated all of the tests with a medium coverage level here as well, where we've got a mixture of both combinations. So now what we're going to do is take the positive tests, take this 8, we're going to export them into our VIP format, which downloads a zip file, and we're going to drop these into our automation framework and we're going to execute these using VIP. Now at this point we can open the files exported from Test Modeler directly and add any advanced data resolution to be pulled from backend databases. We can add any synthetic data generation we need to into our data. We may go off and spin up some virtual services or create some data in backend databases as well. Anything that's required just in time as part of our execution tear-up activities can be orchestrated at this point. Now we're going to go off and straight away execute this. The VIP automation framework picks up our automation definitions and executes them. It also synchronizes the run results automatically back into Modeler. We can also synchronize with test management systems like ALM, TFS and Jira as part of this activity built into the framework automatically. So we'll leave these scripts to execute and then we'll come back to review the results. Now our scripts have executed, let's take a look at the results. In Test Modeler we have a global view of all of our execution results, which have been pushed back up and synchronized as part of the automation framework. If we scroll down, we can see here the document creation flow has been executed. We can see we executed the positive test profile, and of those tests, 8 of them passed, there were 0 failures, and we can see the average runtime here as well, along with the last execution date. If we click on the model here, the model opens up in a new window. As so, we can execute this. And if we open our test cases here, and we select the positive profile, we can see the tests in line against the model, and we can start to inspect them. So if there are any failures, we can go in and take a deep dive to understand what failed, where it failed, and potentially identify why it failed as well. In this demo, we've focused on constructing our models manually. However, we also have capabilities to record exploratory, manual, and also embed inside automation tests to start and accelerate the modeling process. So here we have our extension, which sits inside Chrome, Firefox, and Internet Explorer. And we can use this to record user journeys. So we're going to hit start here, and it's going to kick off the recorder. Now what we're going to do is enter in an invalid username, and we're also going to enter an invalid password, and we're going to click the login button. And we can see we've got an error message here. Now if we go back to our recorder and we hit stop, what we'll see here is it's registered a number of actions. It's registered 7 actions. If we click review, we can see the data that's been recorded. So it knows that we open this URL, we click the username input, we enter some text into username, we enter some text into password, we click the login, and then we remained on the same URL. Now what we're going to do is upload this into Test Modeler. So we'll upload our session, and we'll call this invalid username and password, and we'll click upload. Inside the journeys panel in Test Modeler, we can view our recordings. So if we click here on the invalid username and password journey, we can see the data that's been registered down here. We can see it's also registered the object identifiers, and it's also captured some knowledge about the state of the system, the underlying page HTML, any cookies that were registered, images, etc. So we've captured a vast array of data here. Now if we go into the blueprint view, what's happened is this data has been amalgamated together with the other recordings that we had to produce a model of the test execution. Now what we're going to do is import this model into Test Modeler to start the modeling journey. Okay, so we have a blank canvas here. We're going to head over to the connectors page, and we're going to hit the recording button to import. Now what we're going to do is select the login page, all of the attributes inside the login page to import. Click import model, and that's it. It's imported our model for us, which we can now go away and start to expand the logic to cover our additional edge cases. So this is a nice way to take existing tests as well as new exploratory scenarios and start to accelerate the model building process.
So in summary, VIP provides a simple way of testing web applications. There's lots of time-saving features. There is very little technical knowledge required. You can also easily synchronize your existing keyword frameworks with VIP by importing your existing page objects or test cases. You can save time by quickly building your automation and rapidly updating your scripts every time the page or the logic changes. You can increase quality by using mathematics to create your tests, and finally by tracking exactly what features you are testing. Thank you for listening.